Great. Hi, everyone. Welcome to our Ask Me Anything webinar here at DataKind. As you're joining us, feel free to put in your name, where you're joining us from. We're happy to have you. We're going to get started in just a moment. Just as a couple of reminders for those joining, no worries, we are recording this webinar. We are also live streaming on LinkedIn. So if you're joining and watching from LinkedIn, hello, we're excited to have you today. And we're gonna have our webinar on Ask Me Anything, specifically around our DataDive event. We're so excited to have you join us. The purpose of our time together is to provide an overview about DataKind and to share more information about our DataDive event that starts this Thursday, December 1st. And you're also going to hear from a DataKind volunteer on what it's like participating in a DataDive event. So before we begin, I just wanted to share a few reminders. First, around our code of conduct. One of our favorite models, I should say, at DataKind is being tough on ideas, but gentle on people. And recognizing that people are at the center of all we do, it's critical that we have mutual respect for one another and aim to exemplify DataKind's core values. We are currently live streaming, as I mentioned earlier, on LinkedIn so that others are able to join us. And we're also recording the call to make sure that we can share this information with those that weren't unable to join us today. For those that are joining us in the Zoom room, if you do have questions, feel free to place them in the chat. And we do have a Q&A portion of our webinar to be able to answer them. And finally, we welcome you to post on your social media platforms about the DataDive with hashtag DataDive. This works across all platforms. Here's our agenda for today. We're going to give a bit of an introduction around DataKind, who we are, especially for those that are new to us. What's a DataDive event? Hearing a little bit more about that. Hearing from a volunteer, their perspective on what it was like participating in our event, and then getting to the Q&A portion. So I'm going to start by introducing our speakers for today, including myself. I'm currently the Director of Global Volunteers at DataKind, based out of Atlanta, Georgia. Essentially, I work to ensure that our volunteer community has the resources and support in place to contribute talents while having a positive experience doing so. Next up, we have Rachel Ford. She is DataKind's Senior Manager of Product and Programs, and she is responsible for delivering programmatic offerings at DataKind, including our projects and this DataDive event, which delivers data science insights and projects to our social impact partners. Rachel's background includes project and program management and social impact and international human rights. And then we have Neil Foltz. He is the principal consultant at NJNM. Hopefully I said that right, Neil. Consulting. This is a boutique R&D consultancy in LA with a clientele in finance, online advertising, manufacturing, academia, and the arts. Previously, he's held various roles, including software engineer, data scientist, and director of research and development. And as a DataKinder, a volunteer with us, he's volunteered on projects that have helped support project partners such as the University of Wisconsin, Teach for America, and Complete College America. All right, without further ado, we'll go ahead into our content for today. So what is DataKind? Well, launched in 2012, so that's right, 10 years. We're actually celebrating our 10-year anniversary. We are headquartered in New York City, but operate and engage with a global community. DataKind is a global nonprofit that harnesses the power of data science and AI in service of humanity. DataKind teams with talented pro bono volunteers from academia and industry with visionary change makers to collaboratively design and innovate solutions to tough social challenges. DataKind attempts to bridge the gap between technology and the social sector. This gives data scientists a chance to work on problems for social good, and it gives organizations a chance to maximize their impact in the process. And at DataKine, our team, which includes our community of volunteers and staff, align across these 6 DataKine values that you see here: being humble, sensitive and thoughtful, approachable and fun, transparent and open, committed to excellence, and committed to diversity. At DataKind, we're focused on tackling wicked problems. These problems can be difficult to solve due to incomplete, contradictory, or changing requirements that are often difficult to recognize. And they often include hard to define end state. So for example, when can we say that we have solved poverty? We work on a lot of those elements, but collectively, where is that point where we say that we have accomplished that goal? That can often be a challenge when dealing with various problems and supporting communities. The solutions to these problems aren't always mathematically optimized, and these problems are so interconnected that not one social actor has all the information or all the solutions. This is where it's critical that there are partnerships across multiple sectors as well as communities to help address a problem. And so with that in mind, at DataKine, we help mission-driven organizations identify their data and AI opportunities. We work with the pro bono expert community of data scientists to help address these solutions, and we stick around to ensure that those solutions are implemented and impact is achieved. Alongside our community of pro bono experts, social sector professionals and partners, we're proud of the accomplishments we've had over the past 10 years. We've engaged over 20,000 community members representing over 174 countries. We've worked on more than 250 data for good events, as well as projects being completed, over 350. All of that leading to a substantial amount of pro bono services that have been provided by our community. And in building and executing dozens of, or I should say more than that, data for good projects, we found that 6 components are necessary for success. And you'll see that data scientists are only one part of the problem, or the solution, I should say, going back to the earlier comment that I made, that it's not one particular sector or professional or community that has the full solution. It really requires that critical partnership and collaboration. We look for problems that represent shared pain points through discussions with subject matter experts and other social actors. We know, for example, that trailblazing funders are key to helping to diffuse the risk of new solutions, and they're also essential to platforming and scaling solutions. And as we identify, build, and execute projects with the goal of coming up with global valuable solutions using available data and those expert teams, we need to make sure that we are keeping these components in mind to help mitigate risk, but also lean on the various aspects of expertise that each of these actors bring. These are some common project outputs that DataKine provides, recognizing that this is not an exhaustive list. We work with partner organizations to answer some of their most pressing questions. Some of these solutions can help cut costs and improve efficiencies. It can help improve systems. It could also potentially involve algorithms that can help predict future needs to help better allocate resources and provide more programmatic impact. And as an example of a project that DataKine has done in the past, in 2019, we partnered with an organization called Sanergy to better work together to understand demand for their sanitation services that they were providing. And through this collaboration, some of the things that we were able to help with was creating reusable scripts for training a forecast model to predict future collection volume based on historical data, growth projections, and a field study at a sample location. And we used the results of a 2-week field study at those sample locations to generate estimates of total waste collected and other key usage metrics. Also through that collaboration, there was an interactive web application that was built by which technical and non-technical users could view forecasts and explore historical patterns. Then in 2020, there was an opportunity to collaborate with Synergy, again, recognizing that there was an opportunity to improve and automate route planning by leveraging route planning algorithms. Fortunately, DataKind had worked with another partner called Soil, an organization in Haiti that had similar needs and a similar solution developed, and that the solution from that partnership was able to be leveraged in this one. Overall, that helped Synergy with cutting down overall trips by 13% in terms of resource savings for their programs. So for us, success is when DataKind and its partners have created data science solutions that are adopted widely and contribute positively to sector level outcomes in addition to supporting the specific project outcomes for that partner. So with that said, that's a little bit about DataKind. I'd like to share more information, and now I'll turn it over to Rachel to highlight a little bit more about our DataDive event. Rachel?
Thanks so much, Shayna. So would love to share more about the DataDive event. DataDive events are high energy marathon style happenings where mission-driven organizations work alongside teams of pro bono data scientists, developers, and designers to use data to gain insights into their programs, the communities they serve, and more. And this is all over a 3-day period. The goal of a DataDive event is to have teams of experts analyze, visualize, and combine data to give the partner organizations initial insights or prototypes to inform their work. So DataDive events can lead to data core projects, which are longer-term commitments with organizations, longer-term projects that are really about 6 to 9 months of engagement. So using those insights, they can work to execute those larger projects. And for many organizations, it can also serve as an exciting introduction to data science. So here is our last DataDive event by the numbers. So we worked with 6 partners over the course of 3 days, where we engaged over 700 registrants from 31 countries to help support project needs. DataDive teams are made up of volunteers with a variety of skills to help on project needs. We also work with core volunteers who help provide project support before, during, and a month after the event for any project wrap-up needs. So during a DataDive, volunteers are free to jump from project to project during the weekend, and staff are available to provide guidance and support as needed. As for our partner organizations, they applied to work with the DataDive. So these organizations include nonprofits, social enterprises, and government agencies. They designate a partner representative who is the point person for the DataDive team. So how does this event work? This event has collaborative work sessions, and volunteers analyze, visualize, and mash up data to give their partner organizations insights. It's also a really great opportunity for volunteers like yourselves to build new skills, test out your skills, make new connections, and also get fast results for social organizations. So how does the event work logistically? So our first day, we typically start off with a kickoff event. For this DataDive event, that kickoff is happening this Thursday, December 1st at 12 p.m. Eastern. This kickoff event is really an opportunity to meet the volunteers, learn about the partner organizations and the project, and hear from DataKind staff about these projects. You'll also be able to ask questions, and there will be an opportunity after to connect on Slack about the projects and ask questions. Then we have the event itself, where volunteer teams will dive into the projects. This will be taking place this coming Friday through Sunday. Volunteers can choose one or more projects that they're most passionate about. And there's also flexible participation. We know, it's a whole weekend. We know that you can't necessarily commit to being there for the whole weekend. So we definitely welcome however much you can participate. After the DataDive event, we will work with the core volunteers who have been preparing the projects for the event to share the outputs with the partner organizations, including visualizations, new data sets, analyses, or graphs. And as I mentioned earlier, the insights that are generated here can lead to a larger project that can have even more impact. So data dives occur from your computer. We've seen that we've gotten a lot more widespread participation when we hold our events virtually. So we will be holding our event on Zoom over the weekend. If you're thinking about volunteering for this data dive, we wanted to share some of the benefits of volunteering as well. So you can work and network with a team of volunteers towards data science solutions that are solving problems in the social sector. You can learn about new data science solutions and collaborate with other experts. And then you can contribute to DataKind's mission of harnessing the power of data science in the service of humanity. So once you've decided, yes, I want to be a volunteer, you can register for the event specifically as a volunteer on Eventbrite if you have not already done so. You'll have the opportunity to share skills that you've developed or test newly learned skills. We welcome volunteers whether you have some of these skills and have just learned them, or if you're an expert. So we really welcome a wide range of skill levels. So next, I'll share some tips should you decide to sign up as a volunteer. Our team will be providing the project materials and it will be ahead of the event, and it will be helpful to review those. Additionally, during the event, communication is key as you will be working with others you've just met. We encourage you to be curious, and we welcome any questions that you have either today or over the course of the event. And it's okay to not have it figured out right away. That's what the teams are for. We're really here to collaborate and brainstorm across folks from many different backgrounds and levels of experience. So you've heard a lot from me. I'd love to turn it over to our volunteer speaker, Neil Foltz, to share about his DataDive experience. So Neil, I'd love to hear about what your DataDive experience has been like, and what advice you would give to new and returning volunteers who are interested in participating in this DataDive event.
Yeah, I mean, I have a couple thoughts on that. So in terms of kind of like the actual like activity that you're doing, like like you say, you kind of join the kickoff, and then everyone is in a Zoom. It transitions to Slack. Once the project officially starts, typically there's like a data set that's either in Google Drive or a database. You import that into your environment of choice. Could be R, could be Python, could be Tableau or Excel, depending on what you're doing. And you kind of go from there. One thing I would emphasize is like, this is not a competition like other hackathons might be. Everyone is trying to like work together, kind of it as like a distributed kind of resource for this nonprofit to kind of move their goals forward, right? So, just keep that in mind. Another kind of thing that I've kind of approached it with is to treat this as like it's a professional engagement, but it's also a fast turnaround, right? So, like what you would do on the job if you didn't have like deadlines is different from what you're trying to do when you only have a weekend and you need to get something for the client. And so there's some tension there. I'm happy to like go into that more if that's interesting. So there's that. Typically these teams are, I think the last one I did, we had about 15 or 20 people in the team. And, we kind of started out with a very high level plan of some basic tasks of, what we could do and divide that out. That lasted for like a work session. And then once we had a lot more context, we were able to like more specifically nail down what kind of things were interesting or important for the particular project. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. So then you kind of work through that, you prepare like an analysis and some visualizations, kind of distill it down to something very, very like tight. So typically like 3 or 5 like PowerPoint slides or Google slides or whatever, that you can then share back to the partner and start getting some feedback. So the nonprofit partners typically will be in the Slack. Also, they'll be on the Zooms, and they're able to like kind of give you feedback right away of whether you're kind of on the right track or if you're going down a dead end. So it's very, very important is to like be communicating with them and keep them in the loop too. What else did I want to say? Another thing is to like kind of come in with like some kind of game plan. And so that's like what skills you have and what you want to learn. Since this is kind of like it's a team sport, right? Like if you want to learn something or try something out, like you can absolutely like pair up with someone else that might have, a couple years more experience or a couple weeks more experience and figure that out together. And you can use this opportunity to like, learn new things. But that said, like a lot of times, like the super fancy high tech stuff is not the right solution for the partner. So keep that in mind. Like, I would be surprised if we needed stable diffusion for any of these projects, but maybe. That's something to keep in mind. Well, one final thing that I wanted to mention is that like, a lot of the bullet points on the previous slide were about like technical skills. Another really important part of this is like contextualizing the data, and what that typically means, like, well, like some background research. Like a lot of times it feels like, one person finding the right Wikipedia page like adds a lot more information to the problem than like, all sorts of things of, compared to like doing 200 histograms or whatever. And so if you have like that kind of skill set where you can like, find the right article on JSTOR or, Wikipedia article or whatever, and like bring that background research, super, super helpful. Other than that, like I say, it is a quick turnaround thing. So, have your coffee first before you log in. And, question in the chat. Yeah, but by all means, everyone be putting questions in the chat. Otherwise, I'm just kind of like talking. So from Tolga says, how are the tasks defined and distributed among the volunteers? So this is kind of like a loose knit or informal process. So, DataKind will provide like a doc of like, 10 or 12 like high level tasks that should probably happen. They're going to be very like general, like explore the data and make some histograms or that kind of thing. But then the refinement of those tasks and really defining them is going to happen in the team itself. And it's going to change over time. Like the plan that you start with on Friday morning is not going to be what you're going to end up with on Sunday afternoon for sure. And that's part of like the learning process. Lots of questions coming in. Fantastic. So then would it be possible to, scrolled off. Would it be possible to join a team as a lurker to see how well it all works and if you would fit in without necessarily taking on a task yourself? I don't know, that's kind of on you. If that's something you're interested in, I would again recommend like, pairing up with someone else that, has a bit more commitment or context and then working through it together. Like if you want to just like do it solo, like I think that's a little bit less fun. One of the really fun parts about a DataDive is kind of everyone is doing it together. So I would certainly encourage you to like, engage with your team and, kind of go from there. But that said, that doesn't mean you need to do like, you don't need to commit to all 30 hours of the DataDive, right? You can kind of come and go as you need to. Like people have lives. Let's see. Question from Kimberly Wright. How are teams selected, and what if too many people choose the same project? So the volunteers volunteer for a project. That's my understanding. If there's too many people on the same project, I'm sure they'll post that in Slack and ask if people want to switch or whatever, but there's no such thing as too many people on a project. Like, especially given the tight turnaround for this, kind of the more people on it, the more you're going to get out of the data set in 2 days, right? So from Chow, for the DataDive event, do we have to commit to the whole session? No. Like I said, you can kind of come and go as you need to. It's definitely better to, I think they're like set up in like 4-hour blocks. If you can start in one and then finish it through, that'll be like kind of a whole cycle. So that's helpful. But if you need to come and go in the middle, like we understand and we appreciate any help we can get. So from Sayali, what is the difference between core volunteers and other volunteers? Do we have to sign up separately for each? So I might let Shayna handle this, but my understanding is the core volunteers have already been volunteering, doing kind of the background tasks in order to get everything prepared for this event, right? So one of the things they've done is they've already had like a sneak peek at the data sets the partners are sharing and making sure there's nothing like crazy weird in there. So they might have rectangularized it already or things like that. They've come up with like an initial list of tasks that the main group will build off of. Anything else you want to add?
Yeah, Rachel, I was going to see, I saw you nodding if you wanted to add to that and how they'll also be supporting the event, the core volunteers that are already identified.
Yeah, what Neil said is exactly right. We have our core volunteers who have been working on these, preparing these projects for the last couple of months. And then everyone who has signed up through Eventbrite will be just a volunteer who's showing up to execute the work that the core volunteers have set up. The core volunteers will be in the Zoom rooms and the work blocks. So they will be available to answer any questions, as well as Neil mentioned earlier, some of the partners will be able to join intermittently as well. So so if you've signed up through Eventbrite or interested in signing up through Eventbrite, that will be for an execution volunteer role over the course of the weekend.
Right.
Great. A really good question around Tableau resourcing. Is that provided or do you bring your own tools? That might be a Rachel/Neil weighing in.
Yeah, so I would say in the past there has been a mix. So depending on the data set, if there's like data restrictions, then on that case, like DataKind provided some virtual servers that we could access the data through and do our work there, and that was kind of necessary for data privacy reasons. For other projects where there's fewer restrictions, then download the data and use whatever you need. In terms of commercial software, I don't believe that's something that DataKind pays for because they are kind of a scrappy nonprofit themselves. But sometimes they do get support from vendors or whatever and can provide that. So it all kind of depends. Another question raises. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say we look at the tasks and everything that the core volunteers have put together, and then really assess the tools needed there, because sometimes we can get those free licenses. So that's kind of on a case-by-case basis. But if you have any questions about tools that you'd like to use, you can reach out on your Slack channel or in the work session for the project, and we can get that sorted out.
Right. And I know from looking at kind of the GitHub repos that DataKind has accumulated historically, like if there's a tool out there, it's been used for DataKind at some point, like everything from, like C++ all the way up to like SAS Enterprise Miner, everything has been done at least once. So they're quite comfortable with like figuring out, how to pull that work in, even if it's kind of like a more niche tool. So let's see. This one was an important one. So should we be working on our own computers? And again, like this will get laid out in kind of like the project kickoff. If there are restrictions on the data, they will repeatedly tell you and make sure you understand that. And then you will need to kind of follow those rules. And otherwise, yes, download the data set and do your thing. So that's like a really important thing. Let's see, are there some macro areas, topics you can share for what concerns the projects that will be available to apply for? Rachel?
So the majority of the projects that we'll be working on over the weekend will be concerning food security in some respect. Some of them also have health components. And then also want to clarify as well, there's no need to apply for a particular project. We'll be at the kickoff on Thursday afternoon or evening, depending on where you're joining from. We'll be sharing information about each of the projects, the data, the challenge, a little bit about the partner, and then the skills that we'll be tapping into with each of those projects. So it really is like a self-selecting process. We encourage you to join whichever project or projects feel right to you, depending on your interest in the issue area, what you're looking to learn, as Neil mentioned, is thinking about that. So the kickoff event will be a really great opportunity to learn more about those 4 projects.
Yeah, definitely. And I would also add that there's going to be a variety of things. So it's not like there's just like 1 or 2 topics and that's it. And that's for 2 reasons, because DataKind is working with a ton of different partners, and also because they want as many people as possible to be able to participate. So it's kind of a win-win. Let's see. For each project, how do we know if work contributions have met the expectations of the partnering social organization? So this is also a fantastic thing. They will be there in the Slack. You can just ask them. And that's super, super important to be engaging with them kind of on an ongoing basis. What we don't want to happen is you go down some rabbit hole that's like a dead end and you can't do anything with it. But that said, it is only a weekend, right? And so if there is something that's getting started and looks really promising, these things do not end on Sunday. They're going to keep going. The core volunteers are going to take whatever comes out of this weekend, put a bow on it, and deliver something to the partners that can be used in a more ongoing or sustainable fashion than whatever code you write in a coffee-induced haze, right?
I think there's a good question I can take on how frequent do we have volunteer opportunities like this? Great question coming from Chow. So we're doing this as a virtual global event, but we also have chapters. We have respective chapters located in Washington, D.C., San Francisco, the United Kingdom, Singapore, and Bengaluru, India. And so also through our chapter network, they may offer either in-person or virtual events. So I would say between our chapters as well as our global location here, we typically offer data dives on a quarterly basis. And so the way that you can keep up with any future volunteer opportunities around data dive, or even another opportunity to help support our projects, we have our website, which I'll make sure to put the link in, www.datakind.org. There's a way that you can subscribe to our newsletter, or you can simply follow us on social media. We frequently post any sort of volunteer or event opportunities there. It's a great question. And then someone said, is there a reason that this is a weekend project? So I think this kind of goes back to the high energy opportunity of gathering a collective together. Rachel, any thoughts you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think it's really a way to get a lot of great minds and a lot of great thoughts and a new perspective on the questions that the partner organizations want to address. It's a really great opportunity for the teams to discover what works and what doesn't. And that can be the benefit of having that kind of larger group convening where people are putting their heads together can be of really great benefit especially to start projects that could be longer term or to begin an organization's data science journey.
The other thing I'll just add in too, from a sort of volunteer perspective, a lot of times what we hear from our community is flexible ways in which people can contribute. Folks may not be able to, commit to a multi-month project. They want to be able to show and be able to volunteer in a way that's manageable to their schedule. So we think about that as well. Interestingly enough, it's also the avenue in which people kind of want to test out what is it like volunteering for DataKind. And oftentimes the DataDive event is that beginning of the journey. And for those that like it, they continue on and join other types of volunteer opportunities. So that also lends itself into the weekend aspect of it. It's a nice way to be flexible on everybody's time. Great question. Are the data sets usually manageable in size for using on a laptop, or are they big data? Who would like to take that?
Yeah, I can. So in the context of a data dive, the data sets are going to be something that you can work with in a weekend. Like big data has been kind of a moving target over my career. So what used to be big is not as big anymore. I would say typically, if it won't run on your laptop, then we'll find some resources that we can make that work for you. That might be like Google Colab or SageMaker instances or something else. But I mean, I would typically not worry about the size of the data for these things. I would worry about like if the data is clean or not and stuff like that. Those tend to be the things that come up more often. So yeah, but I mean, they will not be small experimental data sets where someone had like 30 test subjects in a lab, right? These will typically be like observational data sets over, many states or countries over, months or years or things like that. So they tend to have both that kind of like, time dimension and, potentially like a spatial dimension also.
Great question. I'm impressed. Any others? Neil, I really appreciate you sharing your perspective on what it's like at a DataDive event. And so as for next steps, if there aren't any questions, but if there are, we have a few more minutes. I just wanted to share next steps. So for those of you that have already RSVP'd, you should have gotten information on how to join the event, which includes access to a website that we're providing for volunteers that has information about the event. We also are communicating through Slack. We have a Slack community set up. So you will be receiving access to that. That Slack community will be the primary way in which there'll be a lot of communication and updates being shared there. Also the opportunity for you to ask questions. Thank you, Rachel, for noting that there are 4 projects. So again, when the event kicks off on Thursday, they're going to go into more details around the projects, the partners, what are the outcomes, so you can self-select which ones are of interest to you. There's another good question that just popped on. Are you only allowed to work on a project within the defined hours? That's actually a good question. I have heard in past experiences, if there are certain tasks that can be done behind the scenes, there may be flexibility there, but I'll let Rachel or Neil weigh in on that.
Yeah, so one thing I would call out is that this is an international data dive. If you are in time zones that are like off peak, don't let that discourage you from participating. You can keep doing your thing, post it in Slack, and then the next official shift that comes up, they'll pick up right where you left off. But definitely we don't want to discourage anyone from diving into the data. That's the whole point.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. I've seen where that has happened, where folks said, hey, I worked on this, I got to this point, now I'm passing it off to the next set of folks that are ready to engage. So thanks for that point, Neil. And that really, I think, comes into play with a lot of like documentation, communication, and collaboration to keep those efforts moving. And there was a question I mentioned earlier. We are on live stream on LinkedIn, so we have folks joining us there, but we are also recording this. So we will be providing the link to that recording, but also if you happen to be on LinkedIn, you can also look at the recording once our live stream ends as well. Again, once you do register, you'll be able to RSVP first. I'll actually put that into the link. And that is where you'll get information on all things around how we'll start with our events. Even for the kickoff, we will record that as well and post it in the community Slack. So I would ask that folks actually RSVP through Eventbrite first, because that does involve, because we are working with confidential data sets, some things that we want to make sure that you sign off on. So before joining Slack, make sure you RSVP through the Eventbrite first, so those acknowledgements can be taken care of, and then you can dive into the fun elements of the data. And yes, we are providing the recording via LinkedIn, as well as the Zoom recording as well to those that have RSVP'd. So no worries there. We like to record everything for data at DataKind, because we do work with a global community that even some were able to join us today. I think there was a question around, could we join a project even on a Saturday or Sunday? Yes. At any point your schedule allows. This is actually kind of the exciting thing, I think, about the event, is you have folks coming in and out, sharing their contributions, leaving notes on what they've done for the next team of volunteers to join. So yes, you can join at any point during that time. Let's see, making sure we get to all of the questions for the kickoff. Yes, we are recording the kickoff. We record everything, and we will share all of those recordings there. There's a good question. How do you balance skill sets of volunteers across the 4 projects equitably? So you opt in, we manage from there. And I guess that's another good point. There will be DataKind staff also attending in addition to core volunteers. So if there is an identified need, say, hey, we need volunteers that have a skill set in X to help this project, we will announce that on Slack. But other than that, you opt in to the projects that are of interest.
Right. And one thing I would add is like definitely hop between the different Slack channels. Every once in a while, there's like a really specific thing that a project will need. Like an example that comes to mind, if a project has like satellite imagery, that's like a pretty specialized technical skill for working with that kind of data. And if you have that, like, find that project, because that's like hard to find and in high demand. Yeah.
There's a really good question around general admission having access to Slack. So I would say if you are interested in volunteering, we are prioritizing Slack access to our volunteers, because they are working across data sets that may have, we want to make sure that there's confidentiality that's being considered in mind through the work. So we have limited and prioritized the Slack workspace access to our project partners and also to our volunteers. But with that said, if you would like to volunteer, I would register through Eventbrite under the volunteer ticket. And from there, you will be able to acknowledge all of the confidentiality forms and be able to access Slack. So just want to be mindful, as we're recognizing that all the data and the information we get from our project partners are ones that they entrust us to. So as a community, that's where we sort of prioritize that. But for the general mission, you're welcome to join the kickoff. And even if you decide at the kickoff, you say, hey, you know what, I actually want to volunteer, please just register through Eventbrite under the specific volunteer ticket. Thanks for that question. Does time difference impact the project? That's awesome. AM in Kenya, for example. No, it does not. Please feel free to join. We communicate through Slack on anything that needs to be taken on. And in fact, there is some overlap with some work sessions that work out for some time zones as well. And for the Slack link, the way you would access that actually is by registering as a volunteer on our Eventbrite. That is where we will share the link to join Slack, because you do have to acknowledge some privacy and confidentiality forms before accessing that. So that's why we're not sharing that publicly on this webinar. And I just put that link. So just follow that to Eventbrite, register as a volunteer, and you will get access to that link. And I'll actually send an additional reminder to those that are volunteering for those that haven't accessed that yet as well. So we'll make sure, if you haven't gotten it yet, it was sent yesterday. So if you registered today and on, we'll also share that Slack link tomorrow. Such good questions. Is it okay to be a high beginner? I'm going to overall say yes, but Neil or Rachel, feel free to add in context there.
Yeah, definitely. If you're kind of at that point in your, building your skill sets, this is like a great opportunity to kind of, try out what you have been learning and get some hands-on practice with like real data sets. One thing that happened to me is when you're learning things in a class, you get problem sets, and those problem sets are designed, you're given data that is solvable. This is real data, and how you approach them needs to be a little bit different from like those classroom kind of problem set strategies. So like I would super encourage you to join and kind of get some hands-on practice with real data, because this is more like what it is to like be working in the field as a data scientist than what you might get in a college classroom. So
great. And a good point Neil made, if for you, those of you that are joining us a little later, Neil made a great point around even those that have a skill set around research, being able to contextualize the data. So any of you that are great at researching for things, that has been helpful. I know, as an example, I am not a data scientist by trade, but I have a public health background. So on a previous project, when there was a need to contextualize some public health information, that was kind of a nice opportunity to be able to lend support to that team. So we also welcome those that have context background research around food security, public health, which Rachel alluded to, are some of the topic areas. Other questions? And again, as a reminder, Slack access will be available once you register on Eventbrite, specifically as a volunteer, as we do have confidentiality forms that we ask our volunteer community to fill out. Great. Well, we recognize and appreciate everyone has a busy day, and we appreciate that you took time out of your day to learn more about the DataDive. So we'll give you 11 minutes back. Like I said, we will share the recording. This is actually being live streamed on LinkedIn. So you're able to view the recording of that via LinkedIn once this ends. And then we will also share a recording of this to all of our RSVPs. Again, if you want to register, please click on that link that I just put into the Slack as a volunteer ticket. And then once you do that, you will be provided all of the information, access to the Slack community, a website that has all the links to where you will access project info. Let's see what else. Where should we record the tasks that we want to participate on? They will actually talk about that in Slack. So there will be specific project channels where you'll be able to share like what you've documented up to a certain point of what's been completed. So all of that will be shared and communicated there. If you want to keep up with what we're doing across DataKind, this is our website. You can read blogs. So if you want to get a sense of different types of data dives or projects we've worked on, we have blog posts about that. You can learn more about our chapter community as well. Also, you can subscribe to our newsletter, which I'll put, let's see, I don't know if I can type that fast. Rachel, if you wouldn't mind typing the link in there at www.datakind.org/subscribe. This will also, if you sign up for this, we send out a newsletter to also keep you informed of what's going on, when we're looking for volunteers, other types of news and events featuring some of our volunteer community members and project partners. Let's see, thanks for that, Rachel. And then, of course, as was mentioned earlier, we are a small global nonprofit, so we are always appreciative of any donations that people feel inclined to do. So I'll also put that link into the chat as well. Again, thank you so much for joining. We'll have the recording of this on LinkedIn, and we'll also be emailing it back to folks by tomorrow for those that joined us via Zoom. We'll share this recording to you as well. Thanks so much for joining us, and we look forward to working with you this Thursday, starting with our kickoff. Thanks, everyone.